Hi, my name is Anthony Esposito. I'm the bassist in Red Dragon Cartel, and you are watching rockmusicstar.com.
So here we are today with Anthony Esposito.
Hello.
And Anthony is now the current bass player, hopefully forever bass player for Jakey Lee's Red Dragon Cartel. And before we get into the whole process of how you hooked up with Jake and you're playing in the band, just so people get a little background story, why don't we go back a few years and we'll talk about how you came pretty much back into the scene since Lynch Mob and started working with Ace Frehley. Not only as Ace Frehley's bass player, but you served multiple roles working with Ace. And so why don't you let the fans know how you hooked up with Ace and what it was like being Ace's bass player and also the other roles that you wound up doing with Ace.
Well, when I left Lynch Mob, it was like 92, 93. I started a recording studio, rehearsal studio in New York City. So I kind of had a lot of people rehearsing in and out of there, and I became friends with a lot of musicians in New York. And I got to play with guys from the Ramones and this band called the Remains, and it was Dee Dee Markey and C.J. Ramone and myself. And then basically I had a friend who was a mutual friend with Ace, and I was sober at the time. And the person, Frankie Gibson, his name was, he was a biker guy who made jewelry in the Lower East Side of the East Village. He's like, you need to meet Ace, and Ace needs to meet you. So he hooked it up. I went up to Ace's house one night, and I'm kind of all, oh my God, I'm going to meet Ace, really. You know, I remember my first concert that I went to was Kiss, 1978 at the Garden, the Dynasty Tour. And so I showed up to Ace's house, and I remembered that his friend Jeff, who was a truck driver, played drums. And he had played drums, like he played drums in grammar school. So here's my big shot at my basic audition with Ace Frehley, and Jeff's playing drums. He doesn't know any of the songs. And Ace made me plug into this red Marshall that he had that he used on the Destroyer tour. So I plugged my P-Bass into this like guitar amp, this Marshall, and we're just playing. And I remember we just noodled around, played Parasite, played a bunch of songs with Jeff, who really, he drives a long haul truck or 18-wheeler. He's playing drums. And I'm like, oh my God, great. This is my audition. It was up at his house. And he was like, oh, don't worry, Poppy, you played great. I know, it's all good. And then we became really good friends from that. And I put a band together for him, brought in people that I knew that would be able to do certain things in their roles that would give us more latitude as far as set list goes. And like Scott Coogan on drums is an amazing singer. I knew if we had him play drums, we'd be able to do Love Gun and that, or we'd be able to do some of the stuff that Paul sings. And then we did a small run, and we were gearing up to start working on Anomaly. And Ace had all these digital recorders that he would, on the Farewell tour and then the Psycho Circus tour, he would write these riffs. And so a box full of these handheld digital recorders. So I basically acted as his brain. We went through all these tapes and we were like, oh, at 3 minutes, it's a great chorus. And like then they started to get names, and then as soon as we had all the ideas like on a board, we brought in Anton and we started jamming them in a song structure. And then I had in my studio, we recorded New York Dolls, and Jack Douglas recorded that record, and Jay Messina was the engineer. Jay Messina had engineered like the first 5 Aerosmith records and the first 2 Cheap Trick. I mean, he's a great engineer. So I was like, okay, let's bring Jay into engineer. So we did Anomaly. It was basically Anton, me, and Ace with Jay, and that was it. Until the record kind of got hijacked and taken to the West Coast, and they added that cover song and mixed it. I had Thompson and Barbero mixing it, the guys who did Appetite and Tesla. And they were originally mixing it, and suddenly, like, someone came in as acting manager and hijacked the record with Ace and brought Ace to the West Coast. And that was sort of like, to me, that was the point where it kind of started to get a little bit iffy. You know, I thought Ace, that Rocket Line tour was killer, the first tour back. And when we first started working on Anomaly and did all the basics and all that, it was killer. And then once it went to the West Coast, I thought a lot of things changed a lot, and that record could have been better than it was.
Right.
It didn't come out that way.
So you came in as bass player.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, all these other roles, they kind of became bestowed to you?
Ace doesn't trust anyone with money.
Okay.
And he trusted me because I was sober, and I sort of was like, he was getting sober, and I think he liked having me around because I was sober. I really didn't. He did that all on himself. He pulled that all together himself, and he would go to meetings and he got a sponsor. I went to one meeting, he got his cake, when he got his year cake from So Sobriety. But he would always, like, we had tour managers, but things would happen, and he's like, why don't you just tour manage? I was like, okay, and I did that, and then I was stage managing, I put the band together, so I was kind of like musical director. I'd count all the t-shirt money, and I'd settle the guarantees with the promoters, and like, every dollar accounted for, and shirt accounted for, and now, yeah, I did a lot. I put the band together, it was just the whole flight suit thing was my idea, the fake amps, the blue plexi, that was like Ace's idea, and I made it happen. And, you know, just doing whatever you need to do to make it happen and come off pro. My problem with playing with Ace was I always thought Ace was an amazing guitar player, but his solo bands always came off to me like a bar band. And I thought, I told him, I'm like, you being from KISS, you have this responsibility. Being the ex-guitar player from KISS puts you in this spot where you're able to play these places and stuff like that. But the people who are coming expect more than rented backline and what you would wear to dinner.
Right.
They want to see Ace freely. He wasn't allowed to wear makeup, so he couldn't do that.
Right.
But it had to be more of a show. The walk-on music. I remember I got my ex-wife to do like the walk-on thing with the girl, with the spaceship revving up and the countdown going into Rip It Out. Like, always it had to be a show. It had to come off pro, because he's Ace Frehley, And I don't think that he worries about stuff like that.
Right. And so people following along, basically Ace slowed down quite a bit from 2009 up until 2012.
Yeah, he moved to San Diego. He met a girl, moved to San Diego with her, and then he got into this kind of ritual habit thing of doing these autograph signings for conventions, and he could make the same money doing those, and he didn't have to worry about flights and buses and band and crew salaries, and he would just take a bodyguard, go sit at a table and sign his name for 8 hours. And I was like, Ace Frehley, guitar player, the people come to see you play guitar and not write a book or not sign your name, they want to hear you play. That's what you do. You're a guitar player, But it sort of like went more towards, it went from, like, I think the last year I was in the band, we did 7 shows,
Right.
Which is like, it doesn't sustain anybody.
Right.
And being in the band, you always have to look for other things to do to provide an income. And then he's off doing these signings, and you're sitting at home, and then he'll book like, oh, we're going to do 5 dates, and it's always Milwaukee, Chicago, Detroit. It's always the same run. I was like, you have fans all over the world that want to see you play.
Right.
But I think he kind of looked at it like I was pressuring him. I'm like, well, if we're going to go out, let's go out. Like, your fans want to see you,
Right.
He's got the greatest fans in the world. They're so loyal, and they love him to death, But they all they want to do is spend the night with him playing guitar, But
Right.
it's not, I think when we went to Europe that one year, it took a lot out of him.
Right.
I don't think he really wants to tour that much anymore.
Did you ever get the feeling that Ace sometimes would kind of fall back into the shadow of the comfort of being Ace Frehley of Kiss, as opposed to, wanting to be Ace Frehley, new solo career, new material? Did you ever get that feeling that he
No, I mean, I was a big instigator in putting the Kiss material back in the set. Like, I thought, even songs that he didn't play, he didn't write. Sorry, he did play, but he didn't write. Like Love Gun. I think that solo is probably one of the greatest rock guitar solos ever recorded. And I'm like, even though you didn't write it in it, and every night he thanked Paul for writing that song on stage. He always said, I want to thank Paul Stanley for writing such a great song. He always said it. But that solo lead that he does at the end and the middle, that makes that song. And I'm like, your guitar solo is another hook in that song. I'm like, you should definitely do that. And I was the one, like the older stuff, bringing that back in. I was like, I'm sure there are Ace diehard fans out there that want to hear Shot Full of Rock or Torpedo Girl or whatever. But I'm like, I as a fan would rather hear the Parasites, the Cold Gins, the Deuces, the Black Diamond ending at Cold Gin that we used to do, or the segue into a second song on Destroyer. I Want You, we used to stick that in as a segue after Rock Soldiers, or going into Rock Soldiers. But we used to do Snowblind into that, and that actually came about, that segue, when Jason Hook auditioned. The guy in Five Finger Death Punch that was the original band that I had kind of stuck together, was Scooby and me, and Jason Hook was the other guitar. And then Ace wanted to do Anomaly, and obviously Ace was going to play all the guitars, and Jason had just bought a new house, so he had a mortgage, and he's like, Ace, I can't afford to sit around 6 months while you do the record until you tour, and he got the Alice Cooper gig, so Jason went to play with Alice Cooper. Right. And then we had to do auditions after we had worked on the record a little bit, and Derek came. That's where Derek came in. Right. Yeah. So, essentially, Ace comes back around again. He decides, for whatever reason, he wants a different band than what he had. He moved to L.A., and Matt was in the band already at the time, Matt Starr, the drummer, and he lived in L.A., and Ace lived in San Diego. And originally it was like they were working on songs, so he got Chris to come in and play bass while they were working on songs, and then it turned into, I think Chris only played on 3 songs on Space Invader, and I think Ace played the rest of the bass. And then after the record was done, I had no part of Space Invader at all. Right. And then after the record was done, I texted Ace, because a lot of fans, Ace fans, contact me on Facebook like, hey, are you going to be in the touring band? Just because you didn't play the record, maybe you're going to tour. And I didn't know what to say. So I was like, hey, Ace, all these people are contacting me on Facebook and stuff, sending me emails and texts. What do I tell them? And he's like, well, moved to LA, moved to San Diego, I think I want an all West Coast band just because it's easier, and I'm going to use Chris, and if he can't do any dates, I'll keep you in mind. Which I thought was kind of like, after being that involved for that long, was kind of like a stab. Right. I mean, I thought, I understand my role, and everyone's going to see Ace, and I know that no one is in the crowd going to refund their ticket because I'm not playing bass. I'm aware of the reality, and I'm also aware that it was never a band situation, and it was never like, he would ask for our opinions, but he would always do whatever the hell he wanted anyway, but he would poke you just to see what you thought. But I thought I kind of, being friends with him and giving more than 100% for 6-7 years, I at least earned a little bit of loyalty. I knew I didn't have full-blown tenure, but a little bit of more than I'll keep in mind. Right. That was the kicker. Right. And so that was that, so I got my answer, and then he wanted a West Coast band, but then he hired Richie back. So yeah, Richie Scarlett must live on the other West Coast. Yeah. West Coast of Manhattan, I guess. But whatever. It's like I said, it's Ace Frehley. Nobody really gives a crap who's playing bass, as far as going to see him. They're going to see him, and it's just a cold reality that I learned. But I was always a band guy. In Lynch Mob, it was a band. It was 25%. I got 25% of everything, publishing, merch. It was a band unit when we started it, and I had never been a mercenary, and so I was kind of under this guise, this false illusion that I kind of wanted it to be a band, and I thought, all right, cool, he's got drummer, guitar, we had Todd Youth, we had Matt, we had me, and obviously behind Ace, and I thought that would just roll right into the new record, and then I was left behind.
Right.
And I was like, wow, okay, cold reality. And now I understand that. And now I approach the thing with Jake is, okay, as much as he wants to ask of me, I'll be there for him. But I'm not going to, it's not a band, it's Jakey Lee. So, even though it's called Red Dragon Cartel, it's Jakey Lee.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it kind of was a good learning experience for me, even if you feel like it's a unit, it's not.
Well, you just provided the perfect segue
Right.
with that answer. How did it come to be that you got the call to work with?
Well, I had known Jake, and I knew Ray before I knew Jake, after being from New York, and I used to hang out with Ray all the time. Like, there was a ritual in New York in the 80s. It was the Cat Club on Wednesdays and Limelight on Sundays, and the whole scene were those 2 nights. And I'd always see Ray, and he'd always big hug. Hey, yeah, man! From across the room, the big smile, and give me a big hug. And then he did the first Badlands record, and I was still busting tables at the time. And then I got Lynch Mob, and Badlands had come to Phoenix. I had to move to Phoenix because George and Mick were living in Phoenix. And we were working on Wicked, and Badlands played the club in Phoenix. And Ray called me. He's like, come to Soundcheck. And he introduced me to Jake at Soundcheck. And then Ray, after the Soundcheck, Ray got a tattoo, and I met one of my best friends, JJ, who ended up playing bass in the fight, and he was the tattoo artist, great tattoo artist. So, anyway, so go full circle. We did a race for MTV before the second Lynch Mob album. Like, they used to have that rock and jock stuff.
Right.
And I thought it was fun throwing a bunch of musicians on the track before the Indy race and let them crack up the cars. So we went to school for driving. I got to know Jake on that trip, going through driving school and the Grand Prix thing very well. We hit it off. We always were friends. And so fast forward to the new record, the Red Dragon Cartel record, and he was doing it in Vegas. And my son was working at the studio that they recorded the album. And my son got very involved in the engineering portion of it, and he would cut Jake's guitars. It would be the 2 of them in the studio overnight, and they became really close friends. So when Greg couldn't tour anymore, Jake texted my son, who was standing next to me, and goes, would your dad be interested in playing bass? And my son Tyler looked at me and said, do you want to play with Jake? I'm like, yeah, of course. It was like that. And then the next day, I spoke to Jake. He gave me the set list, and the first couple dates, and we're off, I mean, he's phenomenal guitar player.
And there's a little interesting side note that as Greg Chasen was leaving the band, he left Red Dragon Cartel with a bit of a gift.
Well, I kind of walked into this situation, and I'm like, hey, who's singing? Because I knew that Darren had gotten let go. The guy which, I mean, the guy I don't think he ever fronted. I think he was a drummer.
Right.
And then the first gig that they booked was like the Whiskey. I'm like, why not start in like Fargo and Lincoln, Nebraska? Let him like get his legs under him as a frontman, as a performer, and then go and like hit LA, where everybody's like, in the crowd, it's a very judgmental crowd.
And I think he made the wrong choice that night to tie one on before he went on stage, and that didn't forebode well for him.
LA is a tough town to play. It's like a lot of guitar players, it's a lot of musicians, it's a lot of people. There's your peers, and then there's people that want to be your peers. And
they want your gig.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. You got to bring it.
Right.
But and unfortunately, in this day and age, every show that you do, whether it's Fargo or Lincoln or LA, everybody's like, and then, you know, they're walking out of the theater and they're posting it on YouTube. So every show is global.
Right.
You know, so you have to be, you don't get any nights where you can fuck up and like be like, oh, okay, I'm back tomorrow. You know, like you can't make mistakes because they could be plastered everywhere momentarily. You know?
Right.
So it's tough. That's part of the way it is now, and that didn't work to his favor. But so yeah, Greg had offered a singer, a replacement singer to Jake, and that would be Michael. And Michael kind of did this East Coast run, and I don't really think Jake ever heard him sing. I think Jake went on Greg's word. I think that's the way the situation went down. And and he had a horrible first show too. Like the Miami show, it's all over the internet. He was singing wrong lyrics, and it's just not a good spot to be in.
Right.
He kind of got shredded too. But we have another singer on the West Coast for the West Coast dates. So we're sitting here in Buffalo. Michael has 3 more gigs, and then we fly to Vegas to.
And can we announce officially the next singer?
It's Chaz West. Chaz West, who was in Bonham, and he also had this thing with Brian Tishy, the Bonzo Bash, and he sang all the Plant, the Zeppelin stuff. And I'm looking forward to it. You know, in life, you're presented with opportunities, and what you do with those opportunities will create your legacy. Let's see who's going to step up. You know.
Yeah.
And then I don't know if Chaz doesn't work out. I don't know who is next in line. Like I said, it's Jake's band, so I'm the new guy just joined.
Right.
I'm still trying to learn my parts, you know. So it'll be interesting. You know, we're going to do rehearsals in Vegas for 4 days, and then go start in Seattle, Portland.
Right, and just a little sidebar. We had spoke previously, and we were talking about kind of the parallel worlds between Rat and Dokken.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know Jake was in Dio too, in the very, very beginning. Like,
wow.
It's just, there's all these overlaps, and it would be like a really funny family tree if you had all the intertwining of it. You know, it'd be pretty funny. But yeah, I'm loving playing with Jake. He's such a great guitar player. He's such a funny bastard. Like the things he said, the one-line, he's quick one-liners. It's great. It's great. We have a blast together on the bus, the band, and the Tyler and the tour manager. We just have a great time. It's a lot of fun, and I'm enjoying being out again and seeing a lot of people that I met back in the Lynch Mob days when I toured, and people that I met in the Ace days when I toured, and they're all coming out and saying hi. And you know, it's kind of like these shows. It's very loose, and Jake likes to keep it loose, and like he'll just talk to the crowd, tell jokes, and like go off into solos, and like it's like almost like an evening with Jakey Lee as opposed to like this thing where, you know, you come out and you segue the first 3 songs, you stop, you have a beer, he's tuning up, like it's very organic and loose, and it's just fun. It's really great to do it that way, you know. But I'm very happy. I have to say, out of all the guitar players I play with, he's the best. He does so many things so well. It's not just one thing that he does really well. Like he's such a great musician, great guitar player. And hopefully I'll get to work on the new record. Hopefully I'll get to be on it. And I would love to just create with him because he's such a well-rounded musician. His guitar playing is phenomenal. It's phenomenal.
Right.
And, you know, and he's got this bad rap for canceling shows because when Red Dragon Cartel came out, I don't really think the puzzle pieces were all put together properly. And he had said, I have a bad back. I can't do like 4 or 5 shows in a row, you know? So when he saw the itinerary, he told the booking, he's like, I'm not going to be able to do this show, that show. And they never got around to canceling them or moving them before. And Jake's like, I told you to change those. And here he is. We did rehearsals in Miami, and he had this big lump on his wrist, on his picking hand, and he didn't cancel any shows. He's wearing an Ace bandage every night, slinging it up. After the gig, he's got the ice pack on it. He wakes up in the morning, he puts the ice pack on it, and he goes out and he plays phenomenal. You don't even know, but he's wearing like a black. They got the black Ace bandage on it,
right?
So it doesn't look like an Ace bandage.
Looks like gear.
Yeah, it looks like he's got a forearm pad, you know, but it's not. It's got this big thing with fluid in it, and it's like he doesn't complain, and he goes out and he kills.
That's great.
So it's like anybody's saying, oh man, yeah, he's like, you know, he cancels shows. The guy just did a run where he didn't cancel, because we do 2 shows and then a day off, and then 2 shows and a day off. You know, and he has time to recover. You know, his back gets better on the days off and stuff. Plus, we're on a bus this time, which helps too. You know, you can sleep on the bus rather than being in a van. You know?
And I mean, I can tell just speaking to you, you really seem reinvigorated to be
I love
playing.
I can't wait to do a new record. Like, I can't wait. I hope I'm involved. Like I said, I will be involved as much as Jake wants me to be involved. Like, if he asks me to play on the record, I'll be very happy to be involved in the record. I hope. And then I'll be on a record with Jakey Lee forever. It'll always exist, which is a pretty damn cool thing, you know?
Not everybody can say that.
No, not at all.
No. And just one of my final questions, I wanted to ask you, what would you, from, you know, hearing things, and you're a very straight shooter, what are the biggest misconceptions people would have about Anthony Esposito?
About me?
Yeah.
I don't really know what their conceptions are. Like, I don't know how people think of me.
Okay.
But I don't know.
Well, there was a story recently that you're not the original bass player from.
Oh, that pissed me off. That was George. George had Robbie Crane playing bass in Lynch Mob, and I guess he thought it would be better for press to say that Robbie Crane was the original bass player in Lynch Mob. Robbie Crane had auditioned for Lynch Mob, and he was the one that auditioned right before me. So basically, he was there in Phoenix. I flew in, and we overlapped the day. He had rehearsed the day before I got there, and then we overlapped the day, and then I rehearsed, and he left, and I got the gig. So I mean, I don't understand how he was, you know, like he didn't get past the audition. I got the gig. So, and I'm on Wicked, so like, I don't understand how that would, and I called him on it. I was like, George, it means a lot to me. Like now it's kind of, I mean, he's had so many people in Lynch Mob. Like even now we're considering singers, and we're like, well, he was in Lynch Mob. Like it seems like all of California was in Lynch Mob at one time, but like it was a revolving door thing for a period of 10 years where everybody played in that band. When I was in it, it meant something. And I'm proud of the first 2 records that I was involved. I think Wicked can stand up against any metal album ever made. And every time I talk to people, they're like, oh my God, Wicked Sensation, oh my God, Wicked Sensation. I remember my band trying to learn the songs. I remember it came out and like, oh my God. And George had something to prove on that record because it was pretty much him versus Don. And he wanted to show that he could kill it. And I think it's the best record he ever played. Like his parts are just insane. And it was just all these things coming together at this one time, and it just Max Norman producing, and like it just made this awesome thing. And I'm very proud of it. So when he said that, I got pissed. And I contacted him, and I'm like, no. And he's like, my bad, I'm sorry, I won't say it anymore. And I'm like, dude, that's not fucking cool. I'm proud of being the original member bass player of Lynch Mob and being involved in those 2 first records. Now it's like there's fucking 35 guys at Home Depot right now that can say they play bass in Lynch Mob.